You think you're healing, but you're just hiding. Journaling through avoidance, meditating through repression, goal setting your way around grief. You call it growth. Carl Jung would call it distraction, a beautifully disguised escape route from your own soul. We live in a world that rewards performance over presence. Even in pain, we're told to stay productive. Go to the gym, track your habits, make a morning routine. But deep down, the ache hasn't moved. You're still angry, still afraid, still haunted by the same memory. You've built an entire identity around self-improvement, and yet something still feels off. Why? Because healing isn't aesthetic. It's not something you perform, it's something you face. And most of us, we're facing the wrong way. Carl Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. That's what modern healing often is. A dopamine-wrapped detour, a socially acceptable way to avoid what's real. You think you're progressing, but you're just spiraling with better tools. You've replaced suppression with self-care rituals, but your shadow is still starving. Because Jung didn't talk about coping, he talked about integration, the painful, unglamorous process of turning toward the parts of you were told to bury, to make them conscious, to make them whole. But you can't integrate what you won't sit with, and you won't sit with what you keep running from. You don't fear pain, you fear stillness. Because in stillness, the truth speaks, so you keep the noise on, the podcast, the playlist, the to-do list, busy hands, constant motion. All of it designed to keep you from feeling too much. You say you're healing, but really, you're just staying distracted, spiritualizing your avoidance. You've made a religion out of self-regulation, but the wound is still raw underneath it all. And here's the hard truth. Every time you run from discomfort, you teach yourself you're not strong enough to hold it. That becomes your identity. That becomes your glass cage. You wear healing like a mask, but the same memories still run the show. The same abandonment, the same betrayal, the same moment you decided you were too much or not enough. That's why it feels like you're stuck, because you are. You're orbiting your pain instead of entering it. Jung called this the shadow, the parts of us we repress because they don't fit the curated version we show the world. But what you repress doesn't die. It festers. It leaks out in arguments, addictions, self-sabotage. It whispers through your insomnia. It screams in your relationships, and you call it fate. But it's not fate. It's your unhealed self demanding to be heard. Your body remembers what your mind refuses to. That heartbreak, it's still lodged in your chest. That shame, still coiled in your gut. That grief, still echoing in your spine. You're not broken, you're just full of everything you were never allowed to feel. And you're terrified that if you stop moving, it will all spill out. Here's what Jung knew. You don't become whole by fixing yourself. You become whole by facing what hurts, not analyzing it, not reframing it, just holding it, long enough for it to speak. Because distraction isn't random, it's inherited. You come from generations that didn't have time to feel. They had to survive, fight, work. So they passed down the silence. And you've mistaken it for personality. But this isn't just your pain, it's ancestral, it's systemic. It's been waiting generations to be witnessed. You are the first in your bloodline who has the language, the time, the tools to feel it. So feel it, fully, before you pass it down again. Healing doesn't begin when the pain disappears. It begins the moment you stop running. You're not behind. You're just finally turning around to face what you've been dragging for years. That takes more courage than most people ever find. You want power? Then sit with your sorrow. You want self-respect? Then stop abandoning yourself. You think healing is a light, but it's a tunnel. Dark, quiet, echoing with your oldest fears. And the only way out is through. Jung called it the integration of the shadow, but it's not a concept. It's a lived war. You fall apart, you scream, you feel 7 years old again. You disappoint the people who trained you to perform. And then finally, you stop pretending. And when that moment comes, you don't become perfect. You become real. In Greek myth, Orpheus descends into the underworld for love, but he fails. Because he turns around too soon, he breaks the spell. That's what most of us do. We touch our pain and then pull away. We distract, we optimize, we scroll. Real healing means not turning back. It means staying in the underworld long enough to recover the part of you that never made it out. Because once you do, the rage becomes a boundary. The grief becomes wisdom. The shame becomes a story you're no longer afraid to tell. You don't need to become someone else. You need to remember who you were before the world taught you to hide. The angry one, the soft one, the one who cried too easily, the one who didn't perform, the one who wasn't productive, but was whole. That's the self your healing is asking you to come back for. You don't need a new journal. You don't need another podcast. You need the courage to sit with what the tools are trying to fix. The ache, the silence, the exile inside your chest. Because until you face it, it owns you. But when you do, you become dangerous. You become free. You don't need another podcast. You don't need a better morning routine. You need the courage to sit with what all of it was built to escape. The ache, the silence, the child inside you screaming in a language no one ever stayed long enough to understand. Because until you face it, it owns you. But the moment you do, you become dangerous. Not because you've healed, but because you've stopped pretending you were ever broken. You don't need to glow. You need to grieve. You don't need to manifest peace. You need to name the war that's been living in your chest for years. The one passed down in your mother's voice, your father's absence, your grandmother's silence. This is what Carl Jung meant by integration. Not becoming someone new, but turning to the wreckage and realizing you are what survives. So stop running. Stop curating your pain into something digestible. Start listening to it like it's the last honest thing left in the room. Because the moment you do, your grief stops being your prison and starts becoming your compass. If this hit you, don't scroll. Sit with it. Then send it to the one person you know who's been running too. Not to fix them, but to remind them. Their ache is not a flaw. It's a map home.